Okay, so you are pivoting, you have a vision, you have at least some level of clarity about kind of what's the next thing you want to do, the next thing you want to build. And of course, once you have an idea of what you want to build, the next logical step is strategy, right? When you think of strategy, it's like, well, how am I going to bring this vision into reality? Okay. So if that is the step that you are on in your pivoting journey, this episode is for you, right? Inside of Pivot School, we have a 4-step process for how we help you take your vision and turn it into reality. And in this episode, I just want to talk about step 2. And even more specifically, I want to help you understand the number one mistake to avoid when you are trying to build the strategy in order to bring your vision to reality. Okay. All right. So the place that we have to start though is defining the word strategy, because what I find is that when um I'm helping someone develop their strategy, usually they come with definitions that are inaccurate. Okay. So strategy is not a plan. Okay, strategy is not tactics. It is not your offers. It is not the platform that you're going to build your brand on. It is not the conversion mechanism that you will use to convert people. So usually, when someone is wanting to, develop their strategy, they're like, "All right, I heard. Let's just use Russell Brunson as an example. He teaches webinars, obviously. I mean, he teaches lots of things, but he's known for webinars. And so a lot of people would think, oh, do a webinar every week for a year, and that would be my strategy. Okay. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that you don't need a conversion event. I'm not saying that you don't need to pick a platform. All of those things are important, but they're not the same as what I'm talking about today. Okay. So when when I say strategy, I'm essentially talking about the high level steps for how you will reach your destination. Okay. So think of strategy as like an integrated set of choices that positions you on a playing field of your choice in a way that you win. Right. I know that's a little bit much, but basically it's you theorizing. Is that a word? I made it up. I think it's a word. Okay. It is you theorizing. Here's why we should be on this particular playing field, whatever playing field that you decide to be on, and not this other one, right? Not only are you choosing which playing field to be on, but you are choosing how you will win on that particular playing field. Okay, so I want to use an example that will make this a lot more concrete, and then I will give you the mistake that I want you to avoid making. Okay. So let's use Southwest as an example. I love using Southwest as an example. So for those of you who are not familiar with them, Southwest became the largest airline that flew more than any other passengers in America and held that status for almost 20 years. Okay. And I love this for all kinds of reasons, but one is because they weren't the fastest to grow. They weren't the first airline to be created, and they still ended up being the best for 2 decades. Okay. Most of us think, oh, well, there's all these other people who are in front of me. Southwest was not the first, not the second, not the third. Okay. They were not at the top. Right. So it is further proof that you do not have to be the first in order to dominate a market. Okay. A big part of how they not only won, but continued to win for such a long period of time is because of their strategy, right? They were aiming for an outcome, right? Essentially, they wanted to be a substitute for Greyhound, right? They wanted a more convenient way to get around at a price that was not extraordinarily much more, right? So they made decisions, emphasis on decisions, okay, that position them on a playing field of their choice, right? In a way, of course, that they would win. So some of those decisions are things like they flew spoke to spoke instead of hub to spoke, right? Most other airlines would fly hub to spoke, right? But they decided to fly spoke to spoke. Another decision that they made was only flying one kind of aircraft, right? Not offering in-flight meals, only allowing you to book online versus using travel agents, right? We could go on and on, but they had all of these decisions that they strategically made, all because they knew the outcome that they were aiming for, and they knew the value that they needed to create and the advantage, right, that they were trying to position themselves in the marketplace. All of these decisions allowed them to have substantially lower costs, which in turn allowed them to offer lower prices to their customers, right? So over time, they got bigger and bigger and bigger and eventually became number one, right? The question becomes, how did they do this, right? The other airline carriers were not really playing to win. That's what I want you to hear, right? They were just playing to participate. Right. Creating a strong strategy is like putting together a 1,000-word puzzle. It takes all kinds of things. Okay. So now that you understand what I mean when I say strategy, right? This integrated set of choices that positions you on a playing field of your choice, right? And you're on that playing field, setting yourself up to win. Okay. Which is often very different, right? Than what we typically hear about strategy. Okay, so here's the point that I want you to hear in this particular episode. The mistake that I want you to avoid, if in fact this pivot is designed to be an elevation, right? Like if this is designed to help you evolve, right? And essentially go to your next level. We talk about that a lot, right? This is not about doing the next thing, it's about going to your next level. And if this is about a true elevation, not just a lateral move, if this is about, wanting less hustle and more ease, if you want more freedom and more consistent revenue, then you have to avoid the mistake of skipping this step, right? You have to avoid the mistake of rushing this step, right? Avoid the mistake of saying strategy, but really doing something else. Right. A lot of times people think that they are developing a strategy because they're like, all right, I'm going to get on Substack. I'm going to, write 3 times a week. I'm going to upgrade people to my membership, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, that is not what I'm talking about. The moment someone mentions a platform is the moment I know that we are not focused on the right thing. I think I mentioned that in the intro that in Pivot School, we have a 4-step process, right? That we help people kind of navigate pivots and get to where they want to be. North Star is our first step. And I just want to be clear that this is where you take your vision and turn it into like a 3-phase process. We're not going to get into that in this episode, but I'm mentioning it because I want you to understand that that is a prerequisite to being able to develop a good strategy, right? Understanding your North Star. Not only is it a prerequisite to developing a good strategy, but I find that it just creates so much excitement and reduces overwhelm because pivoting can be a lot, right? So it serves lots of purposes. Um, but if you don't have your North Star laid out, this won't work, right? Now, our second step is called navigate, which is all of, where all the strategy stuff comes in, where we're like, all right, well, how are we going to get to our destination? How are we going to actually get to our North Star? Right. But in order for you to do navigate, in order for you to do step 2, in order for you to actually develop a strong strategy, you must first know your North Star. Okay. So that is a prerequisite. If you have questions, you are welcome to DM me. If you want to know more about Pivot School, you can welcome to DM me about that. You can join the waitlist if you need support. Um, the way our waitlist works is that you will get an immediate email that tells you when the doors open again, what the price is, all the details, how to get early access, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So if you are in the spot where you are developing your strategy for how you will take your vision and bring it into reality, do not make the mistake of creating something that is not a strategy, number one. And do not make the mistake of skipping this step. It is a game changer. If you want the kind of outcome, right, that Southwest had, where they started late, right? They didn't move quite as fast as everyone else. Other people were moving faster than them, but they went on to hold the best spot for almost 20 years. then you need to develop a strong strategy.